So to create worlds, we're going to have to go through each of our rules and we're going to eliminate the ones that, or we're going to try to eliminate the rules. And the way that we do that is by creating these different scenarios so we don't have to think about the rules anymore. So for example, with rule 1, if we know that month 6 is a month where no agent is being trained, how can we put that into our diagram so we don't have to think about it anymore? Anyone have thoughts?
You can put an X under the 6 and just leave it there.
Yeah, that is exactly what I would do. In cases where we are using X as a variable, that could be confusing. So another way you could do it is just like blacking it out, scribbling it out. But in this case, we don't have an X variable, so we can use an X. But if you have X as a variable, it can be confusing. So great.
Yeah, I'm gonna black it out. So I'm glad you said that.
It's a little more like prominent, eye-catching.
I get confused easily, so nope.
So, okay. So that rule is eliminated. We don't have to think about that rule anymore. There's no way that we can violate it. There's no way that we're going to put something in 6 if we created this X over it or blacked it out. So now we only have to worry about 3 of our rules instead of 4. And we're going to do that for each of our rules. We're just going to see how to eliminate it and get down to hopefully not having to think about any of the rules. Rule number 2 says U is trained in an earlier month than R. How would you or how would someone write this rule out so we can kind of shorthand it, not have to read the sentence every time we go into our game? Any thoughts?
I kind of did U and then an arrow going to the right, if that makes sense, and then R to kind of symbolize. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, U is before R. Totally fine with you writing it that way. However, sometimes this can be confusing because if you have an if-then statement, which we don't have in this game, but it's written very similarly. So like if you, then are. So rather than doing an arrow, if we're talking about placement of the variable, I just take that triangle off of it and do a dash. Still means the same thing. It just could be a little less confusing if you're watching like explanation videos or looking at how to diagram if-then statements or anything like that. And I use this dash mainly because U just has to be in an earlier month than R. It doesn't mean that U has to be directly in front of R. It doesn't mean that U has to be in a certain spot before R. I think of it as that line as an accordion. So we can pull them as far apart as we want, or we can stick them as close together as we want. So that U or that line can be stretched out as far as possible. How could we make worlds from this? How could we eliminate it so we don't have to think about it anymore?
R cannot be in the first position.
That's true. What else? Well, okay, I'll ask you this. If R can't be in the first position, which position can it be in?
2 through 5 and 2 through 7.
Yeah, -6. So yeah, that's what I want you to start trying to think about is while we can easily figure out where variables can't go, it's beneficial and more efficient and moves the game along if we can think about where they do go. So we can think about where R doesn't go, but then we're going to turn around and then go, okay, well then where can it go? So it can go in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. My golden rule is if it's creating anything more than 4 worlds, I'm going to leave it alone for now and revisit it. And it is creating more than 4 worlds because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 worlds that would come from it. R can go in 2, R can go in 3, 4, so on and so on. So because there's so many different worlds that can be created from it at this point, we're going to move on to rule 3 and 4. And hopefully one of those rules is going to restrict it enough to where maybe we can't have R in 3 or we can't have R in 2. And actually we can only have R in 4, 5, and 7 or something like that. So if we can restrict it a little bit more, that's going to create less work for us. Does anyone have questions on that? It's all about efficiency. Okay, so moving on to rule number 3, we have Q is trained in the month immediately before the month in which T is trained in. Who wants to take a stab at how that could be written?
I did Q1 and T2. I don't know that probably is not very efficient, but I didn't put them in there, but that's kind of when I did my little diagram, I did like Q1, like the one subscript, is that what it's called? The one on bottom, and then T, and then two below the T is kind of how I wrote the rule out to let me know that Q is directly before Tran.
I see what you're saying. So like Q is one spot before T.
Yes.
Is first, T is second, basically.
Yes.
I get what you're saying. So one of the ways that we can write this, we can revise the way you've written that, because obviously you can see how I obviously thought in our diagram. So what we can do is we can remove those numbers, because the numbers can be a little bit confusing. I shouldn't say can be confusing, because I want you to interpret your rules the way you interpret them. If it makes sense to you, it makes sense to you. But for the sake of like class and stuff, one of the ways that we can write it is we can take those numbers away. So we're not always thinking that Q has to be in 1 and Q or T has to be in 2. Because like you said, they could shift around. It's not necessary that they have to be in 1 and 2. So what we can do is we can take those numbers away and box them in. Because if we're boxing them in, unlike our U and R rule, we can't stretch those apart. Nothing can penetrate my box, basically. Nothing can go in between them. We can't shift them around. I can't stretch them out. I can't do anything. It has to stay in this box. And the reason why I also wrote it like this is because when you're looking at where to place them, you're totally right. It could go in 1 and 2, but we can also shift this box down and think about where else it can go in. Because it can also go in 2 and 3, 3 and 4. You see what I'm saying? So if we're looking at this rule, what can we do to get rid of this rule so we can put it directly into our diagram? And I want to challenge you to think about where they can be placed rather than where they can't be placed.
They can only go in 1 through 4.
Oh, you mean like Q, like shifting it down?
Yeah, like QT, and then for 1 and 2, and then QT and 3 and 4, because 6 is blocked out, so we can't have Q and 5 because we wouldn't be able to put T in 6.
Yeah, they can't. They have to be next to each other, and that X is going to split them apart, so we can't do that. So what we can do is we can create separate worlds where Q and T can go in. So you said Q and T can go in 1 and 2. We can move that box down and go Q is in 2 and 3.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yes, that's why I recommend thinking about, rather than right away writing down your initial thought, moving, and maybe if you physically can move it, but mentally moving this box down one at a time. Because what a lot of people think is, okay, it can go in 1 and 2. They pick it up and immediately go 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And we can shift it 1 spot down rather than moving it 2 spots down. So we have 2 and 3. We could shift that Q down 1, and I can still place them in 3 and 4.
And one more time.
And one more time.
Too.
Yes, we can shift it down, that Q down, and do 4 and 5. And we're okay with that because it only created 3 additional worlds. So it's still within that golden rule of under 4 worlds, we're gonna attack it. The other reason why I don't mind attacking it is creating worlds, you're looking for the most restrictive rule. And generally a good rule to start with is kind of a block like this. So if you can get like a chain or a block of variables, that's going to take up a lot of your game board. That's a pretty restrictive block. So they're good rules to start with. And now I don't have to worry about Q and T. Any questions on rule 3? Okay. Rule number 4 says S is the third agent to be trained. Who wants to tell me what their initial thoughts are on this rule? And I will say this rule is kind of tricky, so read it carefully.
I kind of want to guess and say that it invalidates worlds 2 and 3.
Do you say that because spot 3 is taken up?
Oh, but it doesn't have to be there. So yeah,
Why does it not have to be there?
because it could go next to it. Like there's other places for Q and T to be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, you're on the right track. Like the reason that Q and T can go in, there goes my pen, in different places does not necessarily mean that those worlds are invalidated.
Right.
There's a different reason why we can keep those in there, or I should say this rule is read a certain way. So good guess, because a lot of people think it has to go in that third spot, because generally we think third position, third to be trained, third spot. However, the reason why it does not have to go in that third spot is because we only have 5 people, yet we have 7 spots.
Mhm.
So we're gonna have empty spots. Obviously, we have an empty spot number 6. We're gonna have one more empty spot. So when it says that S is the third agent to be trained, it just means it's going to be the third variable in our sequence. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in the third spot. So for example, if we look at world number 2, like we were looking at, I could technically, I'm just going to throw it in here because actually I'm going to use a different color for black because this gives away the rule or world. But Q and T are in my second and third spot. Technically, S can be the third agent to be trained if it's in the 4th spot and we prevent anyone from going into 1. Because technically, Q's the first agent to be trained, T's the second agent, S is the third agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it now. I get why I was like confused right in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's because we have less variables and more spots.
Yeah.
So we have to think about, okay, it's the third agent trained. It just means it's the third variable within our sequence. Doesn't necessarily mean it's in the third spot. So when we look at our worlds, like if we're looking at world number 1, is there a way that we can make S be the third agent to be trained?
Yes.
How?
Technically, we can go ahead and put it in the third, or we could say third is the month that skipped, and we can put it in number 4, either or.
Yes. So because I have these 2 options, I'm going to create a duplicate world down here. And in one of them, I'm going to put S in the third spot. And in one of them, I'm going to put S in the 4th spot. because you're totally right. We could skip that third variable or third spot and put S in our fourth spot and still have it be the third one. Are we ready to move on to 3 and 4? I don't want to go too fast. Okay. So I kind of gave away the second one already. S would go in the fourth spot in order to make it our third trainer. So let's move down to world 3. Is there a way that we could make S our third trained agent?
No.
Yes. Why?
Even if we were to skip either number 1 or 2, that would still, you would still have the other one in, and then you would have that whatever variable that is, and then Q and T, which would make S4.
Yeah. So no matter what we do, S would be 4, or it would be 1 or 2, and we can't have that. So this one is where we actually can't do anything with. So we would just cross out this world. We're not going to use it anymore. Moving into world number 4, is there a way that we can make S be the third agent to be trained? Anyone have any thoughts?
Yes.
What are you thinking?
If we were to, we would have to skip number 7 and put the other 3 leftovers up front with
Yeah.
U first, then R, then S.
Yeah, that's the only way we would be able to make S the third trained agent is a 2 or before it, basically. And the only 2 that we can put before it in that world are U and R, which would mean spot number 7 is empty. Okay, so that's the last rule. We still have to deal with our U and R rule. It's going to be easier in some worlds. Some other worlds, we're going to have to move around some variables. So new rule, we're going to go all the way back up to, whoa, that didn't catch that. We're going to move all the way back up to our first world. What can we do to get rid of our U is before R rule in that first world? Where could my variables go? And I don't care which variable you pick on, you can pick on either one.
I think we would have to create another world, but for world 1, you could do U and R in 4 and 5 and skip number 7.
Hmm. You said you think that we'd have to make another world. Why are you thinking of making another world?
Because we could also do, we could skip one of the 4 well, either 4 or 5, because U just has to be earlier. It doesn't have to be immediately before. So we could have like U in 5 or U in 4, and then R could be last, I think.
Yes, you're right. So I want to hone in on what you said. U is in 4 or 5. That's kind of how I want you to attack it, is variable by variable. We want to think about where that other variable can go, but sometimes it can get really overwhelming to think about where both of them can go at the same time. So if you focus on one variable, that other variable is just going to kind of fall into place. So if we can place U, we can place R a little bit easier. And we can do that backwards too. We can place R and U is going to fall into place. But let's focus on that U, because that's what you had said. So we're going to create a duplicate, because you said you can go in number 4 or you can go in number 5. And now that we have an idea of where U is, R is just going to fall into place. So in our first world, R is going to shift between 5 and 7. So rather than making a whole nother world and putting one where R is in 5, R is in 7, I'm going to do something like this. R is flip-flopping between those two. And then 6, R is going to fall into place into that last spot like we talked about. Moving on to world number 2, what happens with my U and R?
U would go in 5 and R would have to go in 7.
Yeah. No other way around it. U has to go before R. We only have 2 spots available. They just fall right into those spots. And our last remaining world is number 5. We still have to figure out where U and R are going to go. Where do they fall into? Anyone have any thoughts?
It's the same as the other one. There's force there.
Yeah, they're forced into 5 and 7. So now we've placed all of our U and R's, and actually in this case, we have no floaters because all of our variables are pretty much placed. I guess you could say R is a floater, it flip-flops up in 1, but we don't have any that are like true floaters that like we haven't even touched. We've pretty much touched on all of our variables. So these are the worlds that we can create from this game. These are the only worlds that are allowed to be used in this game. Nothing else can be used. So this is what's going to make our questions super easy because we have pretty much all of the answers. Does anyone have any questions before we move into the actual questions? Okay. Well, we'll go straight into our questions. So the first question is a list question. This is always going to be your first question, like 90% of the time on your games. I'm moving our game board to the side because I do not recommend using your game board for list questions. list questions can be done the most efficiently by going through your your rules and eliminating your answer choice that violate those rules. So I'm going to give you guys about like a minute or so to go through question 1, and then we'll go over the answer choices that we have. This is a lengthy question because of the way they've written it. So if you need me to scroll down, please let me know because I can't fit all of them on the screen. So give you a couple of minutes to go over question 1 and see what you like. Does anyone have an answer choice that they like, that they're stuck between, that they hate?
We can eliminate E off the bat because they have U last. After R.
Yeah, that violates one of our rules. U has to go before R. It's a good catch. Any other answer choices that we can eliminate or that we're stuck between? Is there any other answer choice that we can eliminate based on our U and R rule? Do any of our other answer choices have R before U? I'm not seeing it. So you move on to another rule. Let's pick the first rule. We can't have anyone in 6. Does that eliminate any of our answer choices? Do we have a variable in 6 in any of them?
B, from what I can see.
Yeah, I have a variable in 6. We can eliminate B. And none of the others have a 6. So we're good there. We did the U before R. Q immediately before T. Do we have any answer choices that violate that rule?
C.
Yes. Why C?
They ended up skipping month 2, which that makes it not directly before.
Yes. I think a lot of people will miss this one because they see Q and T together, But you're right, it's missing month 2. So if we're doing it immediately before, we would need it to be 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. So C is eliminated based off of that rule. That's leaving us with D and A. So now we just have to make sure that S is the third agent. Which one are we eliminating between A and D?
We will eliminate D because it's the
Yeah.
second.
Yeah, it's the second agent. So again, that trip up of it's in the third spot, the third month, but it's not the third agent. So we can eliminate D. That's going to give us our answer choice of A. Now, the reason why, well, I'll get into the reason why we do all this, but if we have selected our answer choice correctly and we have done our diagrams correctly, we should be able to see answer choice A within our diagrams. And my color pen, we have it right here. Oh, why did I do that? We have Q and 1, T and 2, S and 4, U and 5, and R and 7. So if you're still learning how to do your diagramming, you can at least double check that you at least have one of the correct diagrams because it should show up over there. Any questions on our list question? Okay. Moving into our next question, question number 2. If T is not trained in the second month, which one of the following could be true? I'm going to give you guys about like 30, 45 seconds to go over this one, and then we'll go over it together. Anyone have an answer choice they like? Okay. Well, let's go through all of them. So first off, it's an if question. So it's only restricting us to the worlds where T is not in the second month. So the first thing we need to do is figure out which worlds T is not in our second month. And so that leaves us with world number 2 and world number 4. We don't have T in that second month. So these are the only 2 diagrams that we can use to answer this question. It's asking us what could be true, which means it just has to happen one time in order for it to be the correct answer. So if we can find it in world number 2, it's going to be our correct answer, even if it doesn't happen in 4. So answer choice A, Q is trained in the first month. Well, in both of those worlds, we don't have Q in our first month, so we can eliminate that. R is trained in the 5th month. Again, I don't have R in that 5th month in either of the worlds, so we can eliminate that. S is trained in the 4th month. I have that happening in the second world. I don't have it happening in the third world, but that's okay because it's happening one time. That's going to make it our correct answer choice. D, U is trained in the 4th month. I don't have U in the 4th month for either of those, so we can eliminate that. Actually, it's gonna, there we go. And E, none of the agents is trained in month 3. Can't have that happen. I have to have someone in that 3rd spot, that 3rd month. So E is out. So that leaves us with answer choice C. Anyone have questions on that? Okay. Our next question says, if S is trained in the in month 4, which one of the following must be true? So I'll give you about a minute to go over this one, and then we'll go over it together. Anyone have an answer choice that they like?
Try. I think it's D.
We like D.
Yes.
Anyone else like D?
Same.
Okay. Okay, so let's go over this one. So again, we have S is trained in the 4th month. It's giving us that restriction. So the only ones where S is in the 4th month is 2 and 5. Now this is a must be true, so it has to be true in both of my worlds. If it's not true in both of them, it's false, or it's wrong, not a correct answer choice. So there's 2 ways that you can go about this. One of them, you can use a little shortcut. If it has to be true, and it's going to show up in both the worlds, what you could do is scan both of the worlds and see what's consistent in both of them. So I'm seeing U in 5 and R in 7. So what you can do is you can notice that those are the same in both the worlds. Go to your answer choices, see if either of them are possible answer choice. It's leading me to D. The other way you can go about it is going through each answer choice and seeing if it has to be true in both your worlds. So Q trained in 1, it's true in 5, not in 2. So that's wrong. Q trained in 2 in my 2nd world, but not in my 5th world. So that's wrong. None of the agents trained in month 3. Again, could happen in my 5th world, doesn't have to happen in my 2nd world. So it's wrong. D, U is trained in month 5. That's happening in both of them. And then E, none of the agents are trained in month 7. That actually has to be false because we have R in 7. So that's going to lead to answer choice D. Does anyone have questions about either of those methods? That is why I like using worlds, because this section then becomes a section where you can predict your answer choices and be 110% sure on them. So if I was doing this in a time section, I predict U in 5, R in 7. I see U in 5 as an answer choice. I'm going to pick it and move on and not really worry about A, C, B, and E. I can just kind of pick it and move on, save you some time. But if you need to go through all of your answer choices, you certainly can. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Oh. Number 4, which one of the following could be the month in which you is trained? I'm gonna give you guys like 30 seconds on this one, and then we'll go over it. Who has an answer choice that they like?
I like C. Now that we've created our worlds, I can see why that is the answer. In our first world shows that when I first did this solve this game, I did not completely make up my worlds. I think I got confused and I kind of like gave up. So I got my answers all the way wrong.
Okay. Let's talk about that. Even if you did your worlds wrong, or if you have completed them, didn't go through with them, I would bet that you either hated all of your answer choices or you liked more than one.
But I was able to eliminate D and E, and then after that, I had stalled.
Yes. So if you've done your graphs wrong or not complete enough, you kind of get a red flag that you can do more if you don't come to the correct answer choice. So if you hate all of your answer choices, or you have an answer choice or one or more answer choices that you like, or I guess 2 or more answer choices that you like, that's a clear red flag that something is wrong, something's missing. So that's a time that you need to look back and see where you went wrong. Did you misinterpret a rule? Did you forget to make a world? Because you should come to one correct answer choice every single time. So talking about this question, which one could be the months in which you could be trained? Given that we only have 5 worlds, you could predict your answer choice in this one if you wanted to. So you could go through all of your answer choices like normal, or you can go through and just see where you have you placed on your board already. So I see one where it's in 4, I have a 5, I have a 1, and then 5 we've already counted. So I can predict it's either going to be 4, 5, or 1. And the only one that I have of those 3 is C with month 4. All of my other answer choices just don't happen. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but does anyone have questions on question number 4? Okay. And I think this is our last one. Yep. Last question says, which one of the following is a month in which an agent must be trained? So I'll give you about a minute to go over this one. Does anyone have an answer choice that they like?
I like B.
Is there a but that comes after it?
Nope. I like B because it's consistent. Like there's something there for every world.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, must be true, has to be true in all of the worlds. So you can predict this one if we can look and see which ones have to be consistent in all of the worlds. And you are right. Number 2 has a variable in every single one. And 1, I'm gonna get a different color. I have an X in my second world, and 3, I have an X here. 4, 6 obviously is just not going to be an answer choice. 7 over here, I have an X. With number 5, the reason why month 5 is not correct is because this R can flip-flop. So technically this R does have the possibility of going in 7, which would leave 5 empty, which would be our X. So 2 is the only one actually where we have to have a variable in it. All of my other answer choices, I do not have to have a variable in it. In some way, form, there's going to be one world that disproves that. Any questions on this one? Okay. That's the game. Does anyone have any questions about the game, the questions themselves, the board, worlds, anything like that?
I just want to say this was way less painful than what you did last week.
I changed them. I
Right.
changed the games to make it less painful. So I agree.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, I host this class every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central Time. So whatever your time zone is. Conversions confuse me. So I'm not gonna do it. But every Wednesday, 5 p.m., I've got them scheduled till the end of June. So you can sign up for all of them if you wanted to. You would have to go in and individually sign up for them. And I ask that you individually sign up for them so then I know that I can send you the recording when the week of the class is done. The other thing I would say announcement wise is Nicole and I are doing our boot camp starting this Saturday. So we are doing Saturday and Tuesdays for 6 weeks. The next 6 weeks, we'll be going over logic games, logic reasoning, reading comp. Homework will be assigned. I may or may not offer office hours. I don't entirely know what my schedule will be like, but we'll be very available to answer any questions. It is an intense boot camp, so you do get your money's worth, and the results are very well. I did the boot camp when I was studying, and I think it raised my LR score from like 13 to 20 correct per section, and that was the section that I was struggling in. So you do get increases in your scores. It is producing results basically. So if you have any questions about the boot camp, there's stuff on our website about it. And if you have any other additional questions, I think I've put my email on the website, so you can email me, or you can also email like the general info email. So any questions about any of that before we leave for the day? Okay, well, that's all. I hope to see you next week. But if you have questions, please reach out. Other than that, have a good evening.